Welcome to Lynde House. We've been busy decorating for the holidays. Did you know that many of today's favourite Christmas decorating traditions were popularised in the 1800s? Let's take a look at some of those traditions and how they began. Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert were what you could call the social influencers of the 19th century. Take, for example, the Christmas tree. Christmas trees were not wildly popular with the mass population until a photo of the royal family's tree was first published in the Illustrated London News in 1848. Prior to that, the Christmas tree was more of a Germanic tradition. Prince Albert, having grown up near Coburg in Germany, would have been familiar with this practice. Queen Victoria, who also had German relatives, may also have had Christmas trees at home during her childhood. The picture you see on your screen now is the one which was published by the Illustrated London News. Interestingly, there was a very similar illustration published in Godey's Lady's Book in 1850, but that picture had a few changes. Can you spot the differences? Of course, there are many differences in the decorations we use today on our trees compared with the decorations used in the 1800s. One of the main differences was the lighting on the tree. Today, most of us use strings of manufactured electric lights, and even buy our trees with the lights already wired to the branches. In Victorian times, they didn't have these options. If lights were desired on the tree, wax candles would be used. Imagine how careful you would have to be to keep candles burning on your live trees. Pine needles, woody branches, and lit candles are not the safest combination. So it was common to have a bucket of sand kept beside the tree to put out any accidental bonfires. Tinsel was added to enhance the flickering light of these candles on the tree. The first written description of tinsel comes from Germany in 1610. At that time it was made of shredded silver. Because silver tarnished over the years, other shiny materials were substituted, including aluminum and lead foil. Victorians loved to cover their trees with lots of tinsel. One of the most popular pastimes for families during the Victorian era was creating handmade decorations for both the tree and for decorating around the house. They used household materials or beautifully illustrated and embossed die-cut papers called scraps. These scraps were mostly imported from Germany and sold by stationers and booksellers. If you couldn't afford scraps, you could make a paper chain from coloured paper you had around the house. Paper chains were first seen in the UK on Christmas trees in the 1850s. They would have been an easy decoration for even the youngest of the family to help make, and they could have been made with any paper product that was in the house, such as old magazines or wrapping paper from general store purchases. Speaking of magazines, they were also used to make paper dolls, a wildly popular children's toy, which were also used to decorate the trees. They could be cut out of women's magazines of the day, as the publishers used them as a method of advertising the current fashions. Some paper dolls were quite elaborate, being hand-tinted and fold-outs rather than just flat pictures. Handmade ornaments were more common for the masses, but if you could afford to buy ornaments at the store, then beaded ornaments were all the rage and were highly sought after. Beaded ornaments were being created in Czechoslovakia as early as 1845. They were often designed with tails of beads that hung from the lower edge. Part of the popularity of these types of ornaments was in the novelty of the clever designs. The craftsmen who built them did so in a manner that gave the ornaments a semblance of life. When they were hung by thread on a Christmas tree lit with candles, the ornaments were so light in weight they were able to move on the warm air currents. Children and adults both watched in fascination as these ornaments gave life and movement to the Christmas trees of the past. Handmade decorations were still the most often used, though, and another way to make them was to bake them yourself. Food decorations were usually eaten off the tree between Christmas Day and Epiphany on January the 6th. The most common edible ornaments were different kinds of biscuits and cookies, sweets, apples, and nuts. Gingerbread was one of the most popular cookies and was decorated with light-coloured paint in various designs. Once baked and painted, they were hung on the tree by a thread. Candy or sweet treats were also among the items hung on the Victorian Christmas trees. Wrapped candies from the confectioner's shop were an extremely popular choice. One of the oldest sweets used was called sugar sticks. This traditional candy was straight and completely white. According to folklore, a curved crook was introduced to the design in 1670, when a choir master at Cologne Cathedral altered the shape to resemble a shepherd's staff. Stripes weren't added to the candy cane until the early 20th century, but no one is certain how or why the stripes came to be. We can't mention food decorations without including the popcorn string. Although its origins are unknown, the popular Victorian tradition of stringing popcorn and berries may have come from the earlier tradition of decorating trees with whole fruits. Very early Christmas trees were decorated with items that could be found in the household, fruit and nuts being easy choices. Perhaps it was its fluffy, snow-like appearance which got popcorn added to the list. Cranberries were the most likely fruit choice to string along with popcorn because they were plentiful around November, which is cranberry season. They are also small and semi-firm, which allows a needle to be pushed right through them. What a beautiful display they make with the white popcorn and the red cranberries. All the decorations on the tree make it special, but the most special of all has to be the tree topper. Ladies would cut stars out from heavy paper and cover them with spangles, which was an early form of glitter made from ground glass. This star is a representation of the Star of Bethlehem, which guided the wise men to the manger when Jesus was born. As is still the custom, Victorians used more than just Christmas trees to decorate their homes. Live trees often had to be trimmed or have some branches removed to fit into the room or to give the tree a more pleasing uniform shape. Instead of throwing away the extra branches or boughs, they were often woven into garlands or wreaths. These woven or braided branches were often embellished with flowers, leaves, pine cones or other materials and were draped over door jambs or stair banisters. This holiday greenery is thought to symbolize the idea of perseverance through the long winter season. Another natural product that the Victorians used as decoration was mistletoe. The berry of the mistletoe ripens in December and the plant remains green, hence its appeal in wintertime. Kissing under the mistletoe as a Christmas tradition actually has its history in Norse mythology. Baldur, who was born to the Norse goddess Frigga, was supposed to be protected from every plant. But Frigga forgot to have mistletoe agree to this, and another god killed Baldur with a mistletoe spear. It became tradition that any two people passing under the mistletoe would kiss in his memory. The Victorians kept up this tradition for good luck, but over the years the story as to why was lost. Were you aware of this Norse legend? Another legend that shaped one of the Victorian Christmas traditions was centred around St. Nicholas. The Victorians used to hang stockings as we do today, but they often put an orange in the stocking. One explanation for this tradition stretches back hundreds of years to the time of St. Nicholas. He inherited a large sum of money, but devoted his life to helping others and eventually became a bishop of the church. St. Nicholas learned of a poor man who couldn't find suitors for his 3 daughters because he didn't have money for a dowry. He travelled to the house and tossed 3 sacks of gold down the chimney, one for each of the dowries. The gold happened to land in each girl's stockings, which were hanging by the fire to dry. The oranges that were put in Victorian stockings were a symbol of the gold. Here in Canada, oranges were a very special treat in the 1800s. They had to be imported from a warmer climate, so they were not a common fruit in most households and were often only purchased at this time of year. Isn't it interesting how much of our modern-day decorating is based on historic traditions? We often follow these traditions without thinking about the reason or meaning behind them. We have the Victorian era and the influencers of the day to thank for our current traditions that make our homes festive for the holiday season. Thank you for joining us today. Happy holidays from the Whitby Historical Society.